Hi, Nargis. Hi,
Hello.
Eric. Yeah. So I think we should start the panel discussion. It's nearly 2 p.m. and everybody has a tight schedule today. So I'll hand over the mic to Eric first. Uh, we have, lovely multicultural panel discussions coming up, and multicultural community leaders from Ottawa are participating, have joined us today to speak on multiculturalism and how this pandemic has affected the multicultural ethnic communities in Ottawa. So we are into the panel discussion today. Handing over to Eric. Eric, can you hear me? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I unmuted myself now. So
you can introduce the panelists today and hand over the mic to Nargis, and we'll start the discussion. Sarah has a tight schedule today, so we have to quickly do everything.
Okay, I have my computer is just a little slow today, but the panelists belong to a various multicultural ethnic community from all over the world. We talk about the following, topics. So, how did the pandemic affect ethnic multicultural group in Canada? So I will repeat the topic again. So the topic will be, how did the pandemic affect the ethnic multicultural groups in Canada? So the panel moderator will be Negis Shut, a private banker, RBC Wealth Management, and we will have Ralston O'Neill King, the city councillor, Rita Rockcliffe Ward. We have Claudette Kamanda, and Algonquin Elder from Kitinagi, Zibi, Anishinaabe First Nations located in the province of Quebec. We also have Dr. Ruba Fatale, community builder, public servant, senior economist, federal government of Canada board director, Order of Ottawa 2020 and top 25 Canadian Immigrant Award recipient. We also have Wahid Khan, president of National Capital Region PIPSC. How do you pronounce it? Okay, PCFCP. Okay, so he's also a president at a national council team, ECC and IAAC and PIPSC, IPFC. So we also have Dr. Kurush Manesh, Vietnamese community builder, also Persian community. Oh, that's amazing. It's got to be good today. So we also have Sarah Oyango, founder of Black Ottawa 411, host and producer on the weekly show at the University of Ottawa radio station, the CHUO 89.1 FM, and a monthly program on Radio TV board, member of Black History Ottawa, member of the United Way Centered Ottawa Community Builder Award recognition team. We also have Xiu Reynolds, federal government of Canada, Chinese artist, co-founder of Xingqiu Dance Group of Ottawa. We have Trina Constantini. Oops, what happened? Everything just failed on my computer. Gypsy?
Yes.
I will need your help. Something went
wrong. No problem. I can continue, Eric. We are all here to help, right?
Yeah.
So Trina Constantini-Powell, President of National Congress Italian Canadians, Ottawa District, and second Vice President NCIC National. We have, I don't think Rima is going to join us, but we'll be happy if she can join from abroad. She's flying, she had an emergency, but she's the President and CEO of Willis College Founder Director, and the Director of Elevate International Women Cybersecurity Society, Executive Ottawa Cybersecurity Meetup Group. We have Deljit ji. Much respect to you, Deljit ji. You have been doing so much for the community. Much respect. I'm so proud of you as an Indian, as an Indo-Canadian. I have to say that. You know, you received an award from the Mayor of Ottawa, and you deserve it. I really am proud. I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to be an Indian and Indo-Canadian. Thank you so much for your contribution. And we are so honored to have you today for the panel discussion. So Deljit ji doesn't need any introduction. He's everywhere, but he's a barrister, solicitor, member of the Ottawa Police Services Board, founder, director of Cooking Up Community Services, Board of Director for United Way East Ontario, and recently he received a Community Builder Award from the Mayor of Ottawa. He is just awesome. Proud of you. Marcella Martinez, ex-president, Colombian Association of Ottawa, entrepreneur and a kind-hearted person, always supporting the multicultural community. And she is the sponsor of in-kind donation. She's a wonderful person, a big friend. Eric Tobzo, you know, he's going to speak too. He's an MC. He's from the Central African Republic community, and percussionist from the African community. He's an MC and he's everywhere, like drumming, and entertaining us. So we have multicultural community people, community leaders from Ottawa today. Welcome all, and handing over the stage to Nargis. Nargis, you can start according to the sequence, and Sarah has to rush. So I think the first one will be Sarah.
Of course. Thank you so much, Gypsy. I hope everybody can hear me properly. Yes? Excellent. Thank you. Well, I'm so happy to be on. I'm very happy to be on this panel today. Thank you, Gypsy, for the opportunity. And I am also part of an ethnic minority. My heritage is actually Pakistani, so very involved with the Pakistani and Indian community here in Ottawa. I have been here for many years. But the topic of discussion today, as Eric mentioned, is how this pandemic has affected multiculturalism. It's something that's affected all of us in some way, shape, or form. So to start the discussion, I would like to ask Sarah Onango what her thoughts are and what she feels. Now, if everybody could please keep their questions till the end, we will have some time for questions and answers at that time. So over to you, Sarah. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Nargis. And I'm sorry, I have to rush. It's Sunday, so we're running around trying to meet people and tend to emergencies. Yes, I have one too. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the land of the Algonquin people, the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. J'aimerais reconnaître leur contribution à ce pays et à notre multiculturalisme. Ils ont été les premiers à accueillir le multiculturalisme. And so Eric mentioned that I represent ethnic media. I'm in community media on TV and on the radio. And all sectors of the economy were affected, of the society were affected by this pandemic with everything shut down. Our multicultural shows at Rogers Television are often done, you know, in halls or in the studio. All of that was shut down. All of that stopped. So already that connection to our wider, you know, communities of origin and then the other communities was just abruptly cut off. So that feeling of isolation right away. Then for those of us who are media practitioners, it's been very, very difficult. It took quite some time at the radio station and at the TV station for the people who run those entities to turn around and find a virtual solution to filming our shows or recording our shows and then putting them together. And in the beginning, it was really difficult to get that together. Technology isn't perfect. And the result of that was that when Canada first started locking down and they were talking about the virus, how it was spreading, and the different public health measures, and when you could go out, when you couldn't, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of our ethnic media, like we were sort of, in French, you say pris au dépourvu. We were caught unawares because, as all of you know, most of us tune into our community media to get a lot of that information. Yes, we listen to CBC, etc., but it doesn't have the same impact that it would when it's your own community. So in our African Caribbean community, that was cut off. So now you had to rely on WhatsApp and Facebook. And as we all know, one of the big things that really affected all of our communities was misinformation and disinformation, with the resulting impact on vaccination rates and adherence to public health measures. So without ethnic media to be there to sort of counter that and to help with the public information, there was this void. There was this information void as well. Eric did mention that I'm a board member with Black History Ottawa. We coordinate the opening of Black History Month every year in February. Well, we had to pivot and we had to do it virtually because we could not get 200 people together at Ottawa City Hall. So that was a challenge. But apart from the challenges, there were opportunities. You know, this pandemic in a way has been a blessing in disguise for multiculturalism in a way, because since everything was virtual, more people from outside of our communities, because they were confined at home, had, you know, the time and maybe even the inclination to find out, okay, what's going on in all these other communities, what's happening. And all of a sudden they found all these Zoom meetings and all these YouTube events, et cetera, and they started tuning in, with the resulting impact that in a weird way, the pandemic may have helped. It's been a double-edged sword. It's helped expand our reach, those of us who do media, those of us who do public education and advocacy for our communities. But at the same time, it has made us the subject of increased scrutiny. I know in our Black community, the number of Black people who are apprehended by the authorities for being in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, etc., that increased. You all saw what happened with the George Floyd situation last summer, which brought to light the problem of police harassment, brutality. And it's not just the Black community it happens to, the First Nations, all of our Indigenous communities as well, and our Muslim, all our brown communities as well, you know, have been victims of that. So I'm just going to close by saying that the pandemic, some of us were able to leverage the virtual spaces that this pandemic created in order to more aggressively promote multiculturalism, intercultural and understanding, etc., and enter into collaborations with other communities that we may not have paid any attention to. But at the same time, the pandemic made the work that Gypsy does and all the people who support this work that much more important. And as you know, right now we're dealing with this issue with Southern African countries and the flight bans. And in my African community, it is huge. It is having a really negative impact, especially at the end of the year when most of us are going home after 2 years, some 10 years. And also, you know, the racism and just the way the media is portraying our continent, again, as the source of pestilence, that sort of thing. So we have our work cut out for us. And thank you very much for giving me this time. I'm really sorry. I have to just run. I have a bus to catch and someone to meet.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. That was very, very insightful. You know, we hear you. Everybody did have to pivot, as you say, and embrace technology, whether we wanted to or not. And it's definitely had pros and cons. So thank you, and we will wish you a good rest of the day, Sarah. So next, I would like to move on to City Councillor Ralston King. Over to you, Councillor King.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to really talk about this very important issue. You know, how COVID-19 has affected diverse communities. We know it's been very, very impactful. But before I make some comments, I would also, like Sarah, like to take a moment to acknowledge that the peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. They're the custodians and they need to be acknowledged. In terms of what I've seen as elected official, you know, I hear the community's concerns directly. I'm the council liaison for anti-racism and ethnocultural relations initiatives. And we know, even from the onset of the global pandemic, that this scenario had brought forward a new set of unprecedented circumstances and challenges for diverse communities who have already been impacted by discriminatory and harmful economic and environmental conditions. So as we can imagine, all that the pandemic did was really exacerbate the challenges that we are seeing in the community. And I think that it was quite an important development because it really did shine a spotlight for some people in the wider community who didn't really know about the challenges that the community were facing. And it allowed people to see on a wider basis a lot of the challenges that we see both around the need for better health investments and better social service investments. And that's something that we had heard right from the outset. You know, I joined in very early days, approximately April of 2020, joining advocates in the local Black community, asking for more investments, ultimately based on disaggregated data, and really focusing on the call for more data points that would allow us to develop social service programs by subpopulation characteristics, which include race, gender, education levels, in an effort really to uncover disparities in health outcome achievements and really provide meaningful data on how to improve such services. Because as we know, you know, we can't manage what we don't measure. So there was an early call for that with Ottawa Public Health, and I'm really pleased that Ottawa Public Health heard the community, heard me, and moved forward with utilizing data, especially in high priority neighborhoods, to direct efforts, whether that was health engagement efforts, social service engagement efforts, vaccination ultimately. But it did take a bit of advocacy, and not just in the city, but across the province, to ensure that this data lens was applied to policymaking, which I think is very important. The other element is that all of these challenges, like I said, exist in the communities, but were really exacerbated by COVID-19. And we heard that directly from community members. As a member of council, I was proud to hold, I think, potentially the first session in Ottawa's history for budget consultations this year, just directly focused on racialized Indigenous and Black communities. And so we heard directly from people that they wanted investments in social services, in better health outcomes. And that has actually had an impact on the budget. Right now, we are still in the process of developing an anti-racism strategy for the city. We had success after my election with the establishment of an anti-racism office, but that secretariat is still and was listening to people and providing input into the city. And what we clearly heard from groups was they wanted investments, as example, in housing. And so I'm pleased to note that in this budget cycle, there will be a Black family-focused housing pilot, $700,000 to start, to engage with Black-run communities in the establishment of housing for families who might be at risk. So I think that that is an excellent start. We also heard very clearly that the community wanted investment in mental health. With the recalibration of social service funding at the city, we're going to see a new set of organizations funded, such as the Ottawa Black Mental Health Coalition, to really focus on better health outcomes. So the key here, I think, is that what I've seen over the pandemic is that the challenges that communities have seen have really come to the fore. They've entered into the popular dialogue now. People understand some of the challenges that diverse communities have. And I think at this point, the city, through different mechanisms, including an anti-racism office, is becoming reflexive to those challenges and are looking for ways to really address them. So
thank you so much, Councillor King. Sorry to cut you off. We just need to keep moving. We do appreciate all your efforts on behalf of the ethnic community. So thank you so much for your insights. One other panelist that was neglected at the beginning, unfortunately, just want to mention that we also have Nika Jabieva on the panel, who is the Executive Director of the Network of Azerbaijan Canadians. So welcome, Nika. I would like to hand it over now to Claudette Commando, an Algonquin elder from the Kitiganzibi and Anishinaabe First Nation. Over to you, Claudette.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how much time we have, but what I would ask you is that at least at the 1 minute marks, if you can give me a little thumbs up, so that way I will know it's time for me to, right?
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. So I begin by saying, kwe kakina, kwe Kani Mitch Kishigun Kinun additional cause Kitaganzi bidon Jaban Migwech Kibija Yego Ma Anishinaabe Migwech Pijajig Kakina Omama winning it Omag Anishinaabe. I bring greetings on behalf of my people, the Algonquin people, and I welcome each and every one of you beautiful people into this unceded homeland of the Algonquin Nation. And I thank those speakers before me who acknowledged the homeland of the Algonquin people. So thank you. I truly appreciate that, because the fact that you're making a land acknowledgement, that indicates that you do believe and you do acknowledge and you do accept that we as First Peoples, especially we in this territory here, the Algonquin people, we still exist. We are here. We always were here since time immemorial. We are here and we will be here forever. We were written out of history, or if we were lucky enough to be in the history books were written very negatively about First Nations people. So the fact, I go back to say thank you for acknowledging the Algonquin people and acknowledging First Nations across Canada. Very important, because obviously we're the first peoples of this land. Right. Now, how did the COVID pandemic, how did it impact our communities? It certainly impacted all First Nations communities across Canada. Absolutely, it did. It impacted all Indigenous peoples across Canada, those various communities. And I will share with you how my spiritual or ceremonial community how we had to accommodate, during, and we're still accommodating through this pandemic. I will also share with you how my own community of Kitagan ZB, how it accommodated and is still accommodating for, because of this COVID pandemic. One day you're told, okay, we could go out, and people start to slowly make their way and start to seeing one another. And the next day we have to, everyone go home, stay home. There's 1 or 2 cases in the community. Even if it's just a potential, nevertheless, everything basically shuts down. Everything stops because we have to be very considerate of our elders. We have to be considerate of those individuals who have compromised health issues, and as well as, from one another. We truly have to respect one another, take care of one another, and be safe. And that was the first order of business, was to protect the community. And I appreciate my chief and council, the leadership, for closing the community, shutting it down, nobody in, nobody out. Because whenever there's an illness, First Nations people are the first to really suffer the impacts of an illness. Remember back in 2009 with the H1N1 or SARS, whatever it was called back then, instead of sending medical help and medical support to those northern or those remote First Nations communities, the government, both the federal and provincial government, they send body bags up there rather than sending medicine and care. So what does that tell you immediately, right? I love how Sarah spoke about the racism, the automatic racism and the stereotypes of how they think about our, people of color, right? Okay, so, and I also want to just share with you, when COVID started to become known, back around January, February, March, people were talking about it. Well, in March, beginning of March of 2020, I was told by a certain individual who I will not name, that he said to me, I do not appreciate your people shutting down Canada, because during that time, the Wet'suwet'en people were protecting their land against pipelines, oil and gas, and so on. So they were protecting their sacred land. So I said, my response was, I am so sick and tired of you people always blaming my people when anything goes wrong in Canada. It's the other way around. We're the ones that are always shut down and shut out of everything. And furthermore, it is not my people that's going to shut down Canada. Trust me, what's coming is going to shut down the whole entire world. 2 weeks later, you saw what happened. Canada was closed off because everybody had to stay home. But how did this pandemic impact? Well, we could not go to our ceremonies. We could not hold our ceremonies, and our ceremonies are so important for First Nations people. We have those ceremonies that we are obligated to fulfill at each season. So we could not engage in our ceremonies. We could not engage in our social or cultural gatherings. Our elders felt isolation. The loneliness. I mean, they're already feeling isolation and loneliness on an everyday basis, but with a virus, and you cannot have family around. You cannot have family around. That makes it even worse. And then the children and youth couldn't go anywhere, couldn't see their friends, schools were closed down. So we see a rise in depression, a rise in suicides. And many deaths across Canada in various First Nations communities because of COVID, because our people did not have access to immediate health care, to immediate medical support. They tried their best as what we turned to our prayers, we turned to our medicines, but the reality is when you're dealing with these sicknesses that are not part of our everyday to-day life or anything new that comes in or is introduced, you have to have that medical care. You have to have that support too as well. So an increase in depressions and suicides, which is very sad. It was very sad to see our elders cry because they were lonely, but we couldn't go into their homes and they couldn't come out of their homes. Mm-hmm. However, the other side of that, see, there's always that negative, but there's a positive. Trust me, the virus is not good. That's one sure thing. And our elders told us, this virus, this sickness is powerful. It has power. Do not mock it. You need to respect it. But we have to turn to our prayers. We have to turn to our ceremonies. We have to turn to all that is who we are in our spiritual way of life and ask that help for all the spirits and our ancestors and the Creator. But what we did see was how Mother Earth, she was resting and she was healing. The waters became clean. The land started to grow back crop or trees or medicine that it had not seen in a long time because of pollution. The different birds came back and animals, and it was just so beautiful. It also forced us to slow down. Where's the rush? You're not going anywhere. So
thank you. My apologies for cutting you off, Claudette. Thank you so much for your balanced approach and your insights on the positives as well as the negative. Thank you so much. I'd like to move on to Dr. Ruba Fatale. If I can hand it over to you, Dr. Fatale.
Hi, everyone. And please allow me to also start by acknowledging the land that we are on, which is the Algonquin land, and to appreciate as well the Anishinaabe people and for hosting us on this land. And I would like to also thank Elder Claudette Commander, because she blessed the ceremony, the Order of Ottawa ceremony that I was in, and it was one of my first time to have this blessing. So thank you very much. Also, Councillor King was there, so I really appreciate the support also from the councillor and from Elder Claudette for that. Thank you. Maintenant, je veux aussi vous remercier tous pour être ici. C'est très important pour aussi parler en français parce que c'est les langues. Nous sommes ici dans un pays bilingue, un pays qui respecte les deux cultures, les deux langues officielles. Thank you for inviting me. I feel really honored, honestly, to be among all of these amazing people from across the different communities. So to share a little bit with you, the community that I'm going to be talking about, although I would not say that I represent them all. So I come from a background, a Syrian background. So it's an Arab community, and as well as I'm here from Kanata Carlton. So I'm very proud of these two communities. However, as you know, somebody who's of a Muslim background, I would like to raise the fact that we are very diverse, and everyone here probably understands that we are coming from communities, but maybe we don't represent all of these communities. The Muslim community is very diverse and very big, and it goes from the very conservative to the less conservative to the non-practicing. The same thing with the Syrian community. There are many different sub-communities within the Syrian community. So I do not pretend to be speaking on behalf of these communities, but I can give a little bit of an insight to what our communities have gone through and what were the biggest highlights of issues that they had, they were affected by through the COVID pandemic. So one of the most important thing is immigration and travel. But let's start with immigration. I have worked with many Syrian refugees in 2015, 2017, and 16, 17, and 18. And many of these families who are either refugees or they have families that were waiting to come to Canada. They were negatively affected. Until now, there are families who are waiting for to be reunited with their loved ones from Syria and from other places in the world. Family reunification has also been halted and affected by the pandemic. So we have some communities where the moms or the dads are still waiting to be reunited with the rest of their families. Travel as well. I mean, in my household, for example, we have been missing family members for more than 2 years that we haven't seen them. My husband is Belgian as well, so I do live multiculturalism at home. And we were waiting eagerly for his parents to fly from Belgium to reunite and see them again. So travel, immigration, and refugees, even skilled workers. There are many companies, particularly I'm here in Kanata, and you know, like Kanata North is the hub of the tech community of all of Canada. In fact, we have the biggest tech hub in Canada. And in the tech hub, they need workers, they need skilled workers. And there was a huge demand, but of course, because of the pandemic, that wasn't happening, and they lost some of their profit and revenues because they couldn't have the talent that they need to fulfill their demands. Beside that, of course, there's the tradition. So whether you are from an Arab, a Christian, or a Muslim community, these communities could not practice together. They could not go to churches. There are lots of Arab churches here, for those who maybe are not aware of that. So there are Arab churches, Syrian, Coptic, for the Egyptian community, and so on. Same thing for the mosques. They were not open for prayers. So the community have lost some of that spirituality that Elder Claudette was talking about. There is also the business community. So part of why I received the Order of Ottawa Award is because I founded and I chair since 2015 the Kanata Carlton Small Business Network. Now, the beauty of business is it cross-cuts across cultures. So we have every ethnic community, even Canadian, from third generation Canadian all the way to diverse communities that are with us. So I'm very much aware of the issues that face the small business community. And I can tell you from all of the different backgrounds, there were, of course, the variations, but the biggest effect of the pandemic on them was loss of revenue. Suddenly, for example, those who had daycares, those who had businesses, florists, the travel agents, cooks, restaurants, all of these businesses were affected very negatively because of the pandemic. And some of them, unfortunately, some of them had to shut their doors. That, of course, had an effect on their mental health. Some were depressed. Some didn't know how to get out of that. It spiraled really for some of these businesses. But also, as Elder Claudette said, there is always an opportunity, and also Councillor, I think King was mentioning that it's always an opportunity to pivot. So I have also seen lots of businesses come out of this on the other end, trying to pivot their business to have more tech support, delivering, for example, the food, finding other ways to serve their community through their businesses. Even travel agents, for example, that are booking now for 2 years from now, hopefully when the pandemic is over. So there are lots of creativity and solutions that they are trying to find through the business community, but there is no denying that COVID has been a big influencer. Some are more negative than others. And the beauty as well of it is our communities are resilient. I mean, when you come here, and we all, I think, who have gone through this immigration process know the hardest thing that a human being, I think, can learn from is uprooting himself or herself completely from a different culture, from somewhere that speaks different language, even the nuanced language of culture, and come and uproot yourself and start over in a new environment. I mean, like a tree, how difficult do you think it would be to just uproot a tree and plant it somewhere else? Same thing for a human. And because of that, our communities that have immigrated and have experienced this are very resilient. And I'm seeing many of them have been able to pivot, find different solution, and learn tech at ages that some people might think, 70 and 80 is not an easy age to learn how to use these tools, but they are doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fatale. That we're definitely hearing a common theme here, and definitely your comment regarding resiliency. We are all resilient, having come, left our countries and come to Canada and build our lives here. So thank you very much for that. I would like to call upon Mr. Deljit Nirman. He has to leave at a certain point, so I'd like to give him the opportunity to let us know his thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Nargis. Much appreciated. So before I begin, I'd like to recognize that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe host nation. The people of the Algonquin Anishinaabe nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. And for this, it must be recognized, and I have every respect and salute to them. Thank you, Gypsy, for affording this opportunity to meet you all and able to listen and share my thoughts. Overall, we all are all and everyone across the world was affected by this pandemic. Some were less or some were more, but this one event, which I can say with conviction that we all were concerned and impacted in some way. Now, as per the Stats Canada, immigrants are disproportionately represented in jobs with greater exposure to COVID-19. The proportion of immigrants employed as nurse aides, orderlies, and patient service associates rose from 22 to 36%. Visible minorities, for which we are all here as a multicultural, are also more likely to work in industries worse affected by the pandemic, such as food and accommodation services, compounding health and economic risk. We saw that the effect of this particularly in Calgary and Brampton meat factories during the pandemic. Now, this is an important fact I will be laying down. The increase in hate crimes and harassment or attacks based on race, ethnicity, or skin color has increased, and it was most pronounced amongst Chinese, Korean, and Southeast Asian participants. As member of the Ottawa Police Services Board, I have a close eye on this and making sure that OPS is on the top of it to ensure communities do not suffer and such offenders are brought to book and dealt with by the law. As immigrant attorney myself, I can say that with the decline in immigration flows resulting from the pandemic, finding workers in the frontline essential service sectors could be a challenge. And that is our concern and the main theme of the topic today. I would reiterate that some of the population was affected more and some less, but on the socio-economic, cultural, and religiously, we all were affected. The isolation, especially among the seniors who were not able to move out of their homes to visit their friends, religious institutions, or their peers, friends, or families, led to depression and dejection. Lastly, it is an established fact that whenever there have been a pandemic of this gravity, there have been a change. What we see on one side is that rich became richer, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, at the cost of small businesses to survive. But on the other, as Sarah, one of the very learned leader, said that it brought the communities together across the world, and I would like to echo that. The world has become smaller, and we can reach out to our counterparts in the fraction of a second, which I see as a strength coming out of this pandemic. Finally, I would like to say thank you to Gypsy, who have been tirelessly working in bringing us together on one platform. I may be working with few communities, but to work with such a broad range of community leaders, not only in Ottawa, but across the globe, is not an easy job. As a community volunteer myself for so long, I can say it with conviction. And for this initiative, I would like you all in joining me in giving a round of applause for the efforts of Gypsy.
Thank you so much, Deljit ji. Echo your comments regarding Gypsy. She is amazing, getting all these people together from various communities. On that note, I would like to move on to Mr. Wahid Khan, and let's hear his thoughts. Is Mr. Khan? Oh, there you go.
I think I have been able to finally unmute myself, so that's okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. I would first like to acknowledge that I am working and living on the indigenous unceded territory, traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Makes me proud, and also makes me proud of Canada, which is that we have people living on this territory for thousands of years. And yet we welcome new Canadians every day. Perhaps there's a flight today or maybe yesterday where new Canadians are arriving to make this country culturally diverse and rich. My name is Wahid Khan, and as was introduced, I have a number of things I do. I'm very active in community affairs. I'm the president of the Community of Federal Visible Minorities, which is the organization that represents visible minorities in the federal public service. I'm also proud to be a board member for the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada, which is a organization, it's a union of over 65,000 members. A vast majority of them are public servants, both in the federal public service as well as a few other jurisdictions as well. I'd like to, there's not much, I think, I'm nothing adding new because my colleague who spoke before me spoke very vividly about the disproportionate impact of the pandemic. And it is to be expected. It's natural that when you have, when pressure comes, those sections of the society that are more vulnerable and that are weaker, they will be disproportionately impacted. And we have also seen that whenever there is an emergency, a situation that is difficult for many people, there are also a number of people who, because of their strength, are able to take advantage of that situation. And we have seen that with our big multinational corporations, that they have actually used it as an opportunity to expand their businesses, and the number of billionaires has grown in the past 2 years. And so this is just natural. I think we can expect that whenever there are events where the regulation, the government, why do we need government? We need government for an orderly organization of the society. And whenever we have strong government institutions, they are able to balance, they are able to make sure that resources are equally divided. They are there to make sure that those who are more vulnerable we are able to come to their help in a timely manner. And the most recent example is, as we see what's happening in British Columbia, and it is the impact of climate change, right? Like, I know there are people who would deny climate change, but I think now more and more people are coming around to this concept that when we play with nature, we think we have conquered nature and we think we are very strong. And we don't realize that it is in fact just an ongoing effort. It's going to recoil on us the more we push nature, and we learn that from our indigenous communities as well, that they understand that, nature, you have to live with nature, you have to understand nature. And in many of our cultures, including indigenous culture, but many cultures that have come from other parts of the world, they hold the earth and the river and all these things in high esteem. Some worship them, but it is all to indicate that that's the importance of these. The nature is very strong, and if we want to play with nature, we are only going to do that at our own peril. And COVID-19 itself is an example, how strong we are. We have all sorts of medicines and everything, but just imagine that a small, tiny virus can create a havoc. COVID impact on the global community has been huge. And I always have to look at the perspective, because in Canada, I still feel like, and I'm going to focus on, because that's what our topic is today. But let's not forget that we are still much better off in Canada in the COVID circumstances that many other human beings living on this earth are exposed to. And people have suffered a lot more than us. And it does behoove us that when we are talking about equality, we should always think about, I want equality in my own house, and I want equality in my own city, and I want equality in my own province and my own country. But we all know that unless we have equality around the world, unless we can say that we are all human beings coming from the same root stock, regardless of the color of our skin, the language we speak, and the background we may have, and the identities we might have, ultimate objective we have to say who are the vulnerable ones and why are they vulnerable. So coming on that, if I focus on the visible minorities here in Canada, we do find that they suffer from a number of angles. So one angle is, if you look at this, a lot of visible minorities are new Canadians. They are immigrants, which means they already have a weakness because they come to a different country, a different culture. And I do encourage for people who have not gone to other countries, do visit, because I have visited so many countries of the world. I'm so fortunate I've gone to so many other countries. And I have seen that some very competent people suddenly look like fools. Because once you may look very confident, but once you are taken out of your context and you're put in a different one, it suddenly seems like somebody has thrown you into a pond of water and you don't know how to swim. And most immigrants go through that. Like, that is their first step. They come to Canada, they suddenly find themselves in a very different environment, and they have all the things they have learned. They suddenly find that it doesn't apply here. We're looking for Canadian experience, all sorts of things that discriminate people. So already when a pandemic comes, your existence, how vulnerable you are, because you're new Canadians, you have come, you have tried to buy maybe a house, you're trying to get your children to go to schools, you're looking for 2 or 3 jobs because in this country we still have minimum wage that for a rich country is a shame, because the minimum wage does not give you enough to survive. That is our dilemma, that we have a minimum wage. The minimum wage should be one where one can survive in this country, but we know minimum wage is still very low and it does not make people survive. So that's one big handicap that immigrants, visible minorities have, because a lot of them are immigrants. They still have the financial situation so weak. And that also impacts the food they eat and what they can afford. So their physical being is impacted. And that's why you look at so much of the incidence of high blood pressure and diabetes and all those things amongst the immigrant community, because they cannot afford to eat like Canadians and to exercise like Canadians. They're still struggling. So they already start with a low resistance to pandemics such as this. Then the second one is the kind of jobs they do. So as my colleague, Mr. Nirman had already mentioned, to 36% in the healthcare sector. And likewise, if you look at all these sectors, the person who delivers you pizza, the person who drives your taxi, the person who gives you an Uber ride, just look at all of them and you will find that they are primarily visible minorities, immigrants, Black people coming from somewhere, trying to make a living in those low-end jobs. And COVID has impacted businesses. We know restaurant business almost came to a close. And that's where you see a lot of these people who are, you may not even see them because often they are not so much in the service area where you see them bringing your food, but they are always out behind the scene, cooking your food and cleaning the dishes for you and cleaning the premises for you. They are kind of hidden, but they are doing all that work and they have been impacted severely. Then it comes to racism. And unfortunately, racism has been in Canada for, I guess, since the Europeans came to colonize this area. And many of us have similar experience. And I'm kind of always look at it. Many of us come from ex-colonies, right? So we have experienced all that, how foreign nationals come in smaller numbers, but they control everything. They tell you that, they do not understand your language, which means that you are not able to speak properly. So the language you've been using for generations, for thousands of years, suddenly becomes worthless because now you have to learn a new language in order to communicate with your bosses. So we have seen all that, the impact, and the impact of these things, this colonization is absolutely severe on human beings. So coming from all those difficulties that we have faced, the financial, the health issues, and then, like we have now seen that who are the real heroes. We have celebrated that because we have realized during the pandemic. Now, this is the positive aspect of some of the COVID positive things. We realize who are the heroes. The heroes are not the CEOs of big corporations. The heroes are those workers who kept the grocery stores open so we could go and buy things, who kept the hospitals and the clinics and other places open, that we were able to go there. So there was lots of good things that have come, but I think our challenge is that we do not forget this particular pandemic. I have seen over the past 15 years, every time there's a climate change event, we say it's 1 in 100 years, which means it won't come in another 100 years. And then next year we have another 1 in 100 years event and another 100. So let's not forget that we still live in a one world where all nations are together. What happens in China, as this time happened, impacts us. But that's not because of the Chinese. That's not a reason for us to be racist against East Asian people, because we say, you will remember, the leader of the free world, so to speak, said, this is China virus. Can you believe that? Like, what kind of world we live in when the leader of the free world, so to speak, would call a virus and link it to people? This is nature. In fact, it is because we need to live with nature. We need to understand, and we need to be together. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Very insightful. Sorry, there's an echo here. Appreciate your comments, and couldn't agree more. We are truly blessed to be living in Canada, and if there's something that we can do to help new immigrants, people coming here that are not used to, any small thing we can do, I'm sure would go a long way to help them. And we can use the benefit of our experiences, what we experienced when we first came here, to help those people settle in. So moving along, we have up next Dr. Kurush Manesh. If I can hand it over to you, Dr. Manesh. Is Dr. Manesh here?
Yes,
Yes,
he's mute.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your great speeches. It was very interesting, all the comments. And thank you so much, Gypsy, for collecting all these great peoples around each other. Let's see about the topic of speech, which is how it's affected different communities. Let's see, when COVID hit Canada, we were dealing with two very important things in our communities. We were preparing for the first time in the history of Canada to prepare a very big ceremony and celebrate Nowruz, all countries together for the first time. As you know, Nowruz is a new year for many countries in Canada, including Afghanistan, Albania, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, China, and Cyprus, Georgia, India, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Syria, Turkey, and Turkmenistan, and Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. All these countries, we were preparing a really big ceremony by the help of federal government for the first time in Parliament Hill. Unfortunately, due to COVID, all the ceremony canceled. And the promising for many years to prepare this big event for the first time, completely destroyed by COVID, which is, we are hoping to have this big ceremony in future soon all together. The other things, as you remember, when COVID hit Canada, we just all of us were very sad because of the Ukrainian flight 752 crashed, and unfortunately we lost many Canadian. Through 176 Canadian or people who lost their lives during this disaster. 63 Canadian people, 63 people who were carrying a Canadian passport, they were among these people. Let's see. Unfortunately, COVID affected all this issue, and many people. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. let's see. Unfortunately, this issue affected completely, and many people, they totally forgot about this major issue, which is how fight between governments, in between two or three governments, affected many people, many lives, many families. We lost many of our best during this disaster. This is two important things I would like to mention, which is unfortunately due to COVID. These two things, almost many people, they totally forgot about that. And I'm hoping after COVID is hopefully going away, then we can deal this, with these two things in a proper way. Let's see about other things, about racism. As you remember, when COVID hit Canada, always when you want to fill a list, always they ask you, okay, have you ever traveled to these countries? And Iran is one of them. Why? Because of the sanctions, we are not able to purchase COVID vaccines. Who made this issue? Big countries, the people who hold the power. And they made the rule to not transferring the money from one country to other country. They own a big company who's making a vaccine, and they want everything for themselves. You saw how even in Canada, we had a hard time to find a vaccine when big countries, they were making a vaccine, they were using a vaccine, and we were waiting, and finally we got the vaccines. But we were much luckier than many other people in the other part of the world. I'm hoping all of us, we remember these things and we never forget about that. And hopefully we should not see these things again and again. Okay. Thank you so much for everything. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to have a chat with leader of other groups to just transfer a message of my community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manesh. We're at the 3 o'clock mark now, and we still have about 4 more speakers to go. So we will have to restrict it to 5 minutes, if that's okay. Next up is Xiu Reynolds. I would like to hand the floor over to you, Xiu.
Everyone. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and it's definitely eye-opening, and I'm really glad I am able to be here to listen to all of you, all these insights and sharing your experiences with us, and I feel very honored to be here. Thank you. I'm a public servant, as actually I am a member of the PIPS. I'm in the IT service. Yeah, and I am also belong to the Visible Minority Committee of the Public Service. And community-wise, I'm an artist, a local artist. And also I'm an artistic director of the Chinese Academy, which we offer classes, dance classes, martial arts. And of course, with the pandemic, where the Chinese community is the first group to be impacted when it first started in January in China. And we had lots of anxieties at that time, worried about people back home. And there were a lot, we were not sure what was going on. And we had several fundraising events here in Canada, try to help people back home at that time. And at that time, we didn't expect this would impact us so soon. And ever since March, it was all of the globe was impacted. And community-wise, of course, there's lots of confusions, anxieties, isolation, and also I heard the many people, among my friends, and even from the community, we did experience more misunderstanding, or or maybe even verbal comments against targeted to Chinese people, because some people they're frustrated and they turn their frustration to us. And there are also incidents of physical assaults against the Chinese community. Some of the senior people, they were afraid to go out because they were afraid of being targeted. And as a community, we try to help. And luckily, yes, because of the technology, we were able to organize remote events and try to bring people together. And also, especially the senior people, they give them chances to talk about their anxieties, their when they're lonely, they can get some help. And for myself, I try to organize some virtual classes to provide like free virtual classes to people of all ages, different ages. I try to keep them mentally healthy by doing some exercises or some events as well. We had to cancel all our live performances because the Chinese community is very sociable. We have lots of community wild events to celebrate, like Chinese New Year and all kinds of other special occasions. All those canceled, but luckily we were able to do a lot of the events virtually, try to get people more involved. And we also, there were a lot of support groups to help the senior people, like buying groceries for them when there was lockdown. And there were also the community organizations were also offering different type of counseling, try to help them, and people with financial difficulties. There were events try to help these people to, like the business people. Some of them were very, very hardly hit. So overall, it is definitely, it's very hard for everyone, and everybody's impacted. But the good part, the positive side is, as several of you already mentioned, yes, it made us stronger, and we all try to help each other and to understand where we are. And it is the pandemic is not just isolated for one group. It's a global problem, so we have to be together to fight, and we have to support each other, not blaming each other because it's not somebody's virus. It's unfortunately the virus is not aiming to certain group. It impacts every group, so we have to be together to get through this. And I'm sure with all the technology, science, the vaccine, all these measures, security, these public health measures, hopefully we'll see the end of it soon. So thank you again for having me. I'm very honored. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Xiu. Couldn't agree more with you that we have to help each other, support each other. And I'm sure your virtual free classes were very well received. As you know, we all put on those COVID 10 pounds. So I'm sure that was excellent. Thank you for that. So let's move on to Trina Constantini-Powell. Trina?
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm honored to be here amongst so many other important community leaders, as well as humbled to be on the land of the Algonquin Nation, the Anishinaabe. And I think there's such a common thread that is that's weaving through all these stories. And I look at the Italian community, and the Italian community is a very old community here in Ottawa. So it's become somewhat assimilated over the years. So we haven't had the challenges of racism, you know, that has been set against us. But we do have, I think, very important tenets. And I think of, first off, the seniors, and how the seniors in the Italian community are very, very well respected. And I look at the seniors home, which is an LTC center, as well as a cultural center out at Villa Marconi. And so you had many of the elders in the community who are in LTC care, who would on a regular daily basis have their family members come in and sit with them, and sit with them at meals, feed them meals, attend certain functions. And then all of a sudden that is not happening. And so you have the seniors, many of them perhaps with dementia, not fully comprehending why their sons and daughters are no longer there, and why there are certain cultural activities such as song fests or word fests. They're just activities put on by the home. All of a sudden that's shut down. There were a number of people that, friends of mine, that were they just felt so isolated because they could not go to visit their parents. When the virus first hit, when we first started to hear about it, and I'm thinking back to February 2020, I remember some friends of mine saying, you know, my cousins in Northern Italy, up in and around Milan, this virus is there and people are getting sick. And we all know that in the early days, especially the northern region of Italy was very, very heavily hit. And then all of a sudden, you know, move forward a couple of months and you're hearing, I've lost a cousin, I've lost a sister, and nobody can go to express any form of grief. In a better world, they would have been able to, you know, hop on a flight and go over and mourn these individuals. That couldn't happen in Italy. It also couldn't happen here in Canada. So you had family members that died, of old age, for instance, or of a long-standing illness. The churches perhaps were not open for a time being, or when they were, you could have only 10 people at a funeral. And that was very, very hard on many people in the community, because the Italian people are very social and they missed being with their families. And when you have to have a funeral service and the grandchildren cannot go, you had to make the choices as to who could attend. That played very hard on many individuals. I think of the Sarah voiced the fact about the ethnic media, and we have a television show, an hour show through Rogers Cable, and that had to stop. Their events every week, out in the community, and Rogers would be there to film it. All of a sudden, nothing is happening. So there's no programming going on. So they're into repeats, and they're pretty much still at a standstill, wondering when we're going to be able to resume something going on in the community. I think of many friends who have businesses in and along Creston Street, which is the main heart of the Italian community, the main thoroughfare. And a lot of those businesses, as many throughout our city and throughout the country, had to shut down. And so what do they do now? Some went into takeout, but you really don't make a lot that way. Some had to pivot. So for instance, just this past weekend, the owners of the Sala San Marco, which was a 600-person banquet hall, they had to make the decision last year that they were going to basically cut their banquet hall in half and turn the front part of it into a market area, a grocery store that is well needed for the Italian area. But that was a choice that they had to make. So they had to pivot in that respect, just to be able to make a living, because the banquet hall was there. That was their livelihood. And now all of a sudden, there are no weddings, there are no parties, there are no events. So what is happening there? many of our community who travel back to Italy on a regular basis every summer and may go back for a couple of months to visit family members. That's not happening. So there's so many different aspects, I think, that weave through all of our communities. And it's just something that I do believe that I think we have to be there to help one another. I think it's so very important for sessions like this. And Gypsy, thank you so much for us all to learn about each other and to realize that, yes, we have our own individual communities, but we're one big globe. And even though the world is massive, we still are small, and we still are able to respect the fact that there are other cultures that I think we should be interconnecting with, because it is so very, very important. So those are just a few little pieces I want to touch upon. If you have more time, there's many other things, but it's only fair to give others the chance to discuss their situation within their own community. Thank you
so much, Trina, for your thoughts. You know, when you mentioned about the seniors and not being able to visit and people passing away, unfortunately, I went through that myself. My father got COVID earlier in the year in January, and it was such a struggle to try to get a plane ticket to travel. And even when I did manage to get there, I wasn't even able to see him because they wouldn't let us in the hospital. So it was very heartbreaking and emotional. And for someone, you know, who had built a life, been in that country for over 50 years, not to have anybody other than immediate family at his funeral was completely heartbreaking. So I totally hear what you're saying there, Trina. So let's move on to Marcella Martinez. Marcella, if you would like to share your thoughts.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this invitation. I am very honored of being part of this amazing event. Thank you, Gypsy, for organizing this multicultural mosaic. This is amazing, especially during this pandemic and post-pandemic time. So I am part of a Colombian dance and art group. It is called Heritage Colombian, as you can see. I am a dancer of this group. And I want to talk a little bit, how was the experience during this pandemic for all these dancing groups, art groups, cultural groups. In our case, before the pandemic, we used to practice in person, and it was amazing. But as soon as the pandemic arrived, we had to stop. And it was very, very sad. It was very frustrating. We stopped for a while, but then we thought we cannot finish what we have built with a lot of effort for years. So we decided to use Zoom, as everybody did. It wasn't easy. We had a lot of problems with technology, internet connection, delays, whatever you want. But we knew that we had to do this if we wanted to keep the group alive. The bad outcome of using Zoom was that the children who were part of our group, they couldn't follow the practices by Zoom. So most of them quit the group. It was very, very, very sad. The good outcome was that we were able to connect with amazing teachers, dancing teachers from everywhere, from Toronto, from Montreal, from Vancouver, from Colombia. And this experience enriched our group. As soon as the social distancing measures were lifted, we started to practice in person, but with this uncomfortable mask, oh my goodness, it was a nightmare. We couldn't breathe, but we knew that it was a price that we had to pay to continue with the group. So we did it. Finally, we had a great support from the Bill of Gatineau. They allowed us to present in 10 different scenarios between performances and workshops. And it was very, very rewarding. People were so happy of having a group doing this amazing presentation. And they asked us, how did you practice? My goodness, everybody was in lockdown and you bring this presentation, but it was thanks to our efforts. And as a result, we got more public, we got more followers in our social media. And it was not only for Heritage Colombian. I know that it was the same situation for Esmeraldas de Colombia in Ottawa, for Espace Intercultural Jambae in Montreal, and different Colombian groups across Canada. We reinvented ourselves. We took advantage of technology. And now I feel that we are more resilient. And we feel that if we were able to keep our groups alive during this pandemic, we are able to achieve the goals that we want. Finally, to continue growing and bringing joy to this amazing multicultural Canadian mosaic, we need your support. So we will be contacting you very, very soon. And we also want to invite you to be part of our group. We will have an open house on February 2022. So I hope that you can join us and be part of this amazing experience. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Marcella, on your success. That's amazing. And we've heard the word resilient throughout this discussion. So very well done. Congratulations. We have about 10 minutes left, and we did want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to go quickly. Let's move on to Nika. If Nika, you would like to add your comments.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. I wanted to mention that I'm addressing you all from modern day Vaughan in Toronto, which stands on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat First Nations people. Thank you for hosting us on your land. My name is Nika Jabieva. I am the Executive Director of Network of Azerbaijani Canadians. We are the largest grassroots Azerbaijani advocacy organization in Canada. Thank you to the organizers for bringing us together to celebrate this beautiful diversity of this country, and also to be able to talk about our issues, the issues that we collectively face. In Canada, we Azerbaijanis feel so much at home due to the shared values of multiculturalism. It's how we grew up. Different religions and ethnicities living together was our natural course of life in Azerbaijan, and still is. Perhaps because Azerbaijan is physically located at the very cusp of Europe and Asia, right in the South Caucasus. Our music, theater, opera, culture, our customs, our mentality had been shaped by both Eastern and Western traditions. Being a secular Muslim majority country, growing up, we would celebrate Hanukkah with our Jewish neighbors and friends, would bake kuliches for Orthodox Easter, would celebrate Eid. The largest celebration in Azerbaijan is Nowruz, which is rooted in Zoroastrianism, where we welcome the coming of spring. So we've got a little bit of everything, and it's always been celebrated in our culture, and our community here in Canada mimics that beautifully. We use each other's languages and idioms interchangeably. Azerbaijani Jews can say things like, Inshallah, we'll be there for Shabbat. And I think it's the most beautiful example of coexistence I've seen anywhere, and this is why we feel at home here in Canada. COVID had been hard on everyone. This does not exclude our community. Our organization helped to coordinate various programs for Azerbaijanis in Canada, specifically our youth and the international students who found themselves unable to return home to their families because of the pandemic, living on a minimal student budget. We had to mobilize to offer support to our larger community who had been affected by COVID. The most at risk were also the new immigrants who were, found themselves in a new country, many of them not knowing the language. As someone mentioned, it affected our children who were not accustomed to online schooling. My own daughter was looking forward to starting preschool, going physically to school, and then suddenly had to start it in online format. Our community had to gather in the virtual world to celebrate holidays like Nowruz, which we've been used to celebrating in large groups for centuries in person. It's been extra difficult for Azerbaijanis in Canada because of the war in Karabakh. We've also been going through a war last year. Many of you may have heard about the war in Karabakh between Azerbaijan and Armenia. as a result of a 30-year-long UN-condemned occupation of Azerbaijan's Karabakh region. 800,000 of us had been ethnically cleansed from Karabakh in the 90s, and making every 10th of us internally displaced in our own country. So war trauma isn't new to us. So in midst of the pandemic, this was an additional stress and anxiety that affected our entire community all over the world, and specifically here in Canada. Rockets were thrown at our civilian cities, targeting our families. It gravely affected our community here, who also had families and links to our Azerbaijani communities in Azerbaijan. So we once again mobilized to provide support to the families of the affected back home. A community that had just been trying to overcome a pandemic was now once again mobilizing to overcome the effects of war. So like many of us, I don't want to take up too much time, but like many of us, of our beautiful communities here in Canada, we're held up by our resilience, and I mentioned that once again, and fortitude. And the celebration of one another here today is the biggest testament to our strength and our collective will to recover and keep moving forward. So I wanted to just thank you once again for this beautiful celebration, and I'll say it in Azerbaijani, çok sağ olun.
Thank you, Nika, and thank you for joining us from Vaughan. Last but not least, we have Eric Topso, who's going to close off, I guess, this discussion. Over to you, Eric.
Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure again to share quickly my ideas, my thoughts with you. I represent two dimensions. The first one is the Central African community, and the second is a professional artist, and how did I survive, especially, or how did we survive through the pandemic time? The first thing is that the Central African community is very impacted by the fact that there is always a civil war going on in the country now. I remember that since I was a child, there is always arms and guns time to time on the street, and then people have to run. There is always military, France military or UN trying to intervene for certain reasons, and there have been always instability. So during the pandemic, it's a coincidence that the Central African community members would receive like newcomers at the same time were coming into the country. Some of them don't speak the language, and then people like me have the ability to do the translation for the immigration and all that. And it was not easy to just coordinate all that. So some of the cases were standing like put on hold and stand by. And people were mentally, you see, when you come here and you don't know exactly what is your status and what could happen to you, it's even if they say, even if people tell you, oh, Canada is a stable country, you will never believe, because you come from a traumatized background, and then you think, oh, they are lying to me again. Why if this is possible, why is it that they're holding on to this and not tell me exactly what is happening? That's the same mentality. So these are I put this like that. It's something that people would not tell, or you would not understand if you don't come closer to people going through those type of moments. And the other thing is that we like celebrating when someone passes away. It's the whole community, different province would come together to support the family and all that. But COVID, the pandemic didn't let that happen. And we also are used to seeing when somebody passed away. We are all used to come, even if it's where the funeral will take place, even just to come and see the corpse of the person, see the face mainly, and say hi. And say goodbye, and then all that wouldn't happen. And that was a shocking reality for the entire community. Plus that we had to raise money, especially for some families, because we have some people passed away during that moment. Some two elder people passed away due to the coronavirus, and we had to raise money and all that to be able to do funerals and all that. So despite the fact that we couldn't come all of us together, people raised money all over the communities, different provinces, and then we finally did it. So that's that. There is a lot to say on that side. However, I have to come back to myself. It wasn't easy as an artist, as a professional artist. You see, what I do is that I'm always in front of people. So there is always a difficulty for me if I don't see people, if I don't entertain people, if I don't, share my messages, my thoughts with people. So that was very hard. So the pandemic was a very financial obstacle to me. Despite the fact that we received something from the government, but it was not enough if you have people in your charge, and then you have to take care of your family and pay all the bills. It wasn't easy, but however, the first time I did not understand how to play the drum in different events live on Zoom. You see, so I believe last time with Pedro, I think Gypsy will remember the last festival we did. We had some in the panel discussion. I had exchanged idea and I explained about my difficulties. And one of the Brazilian drummers like me said, Eric, I know what to do. Go at the settings, and then you can build the sound suppression that will help you. And then from there till today, I have programmed my laptop, and I will be able to perform live in different events. And I have done through the pandemic a lot of performances, even with the government, even with communities, even with particular people and all that. So I have to be short, right? Am I still in the frame of time?
It's 3:30 on the dot. I'm not sure if we will have any time for questions, Gypsy, but thank you very much for sharing, Eric. I'm going to hand it back over to Gypsy.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much to all the community leaders and our panelists here today. Of course, a little time for questions. So panelists are here, Olsen King is here, few distinguished panelists are here. So anybody has a question can raise hand. Yeah, we'll give some time because this is very important. This is a very important discussion.
Thank you, teacher. I raise my hand. For those who don't know me, my name is Ana Maria Cruz Valderrama. I am a community leader, member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, member of the Senior Roundtable, and also I will start my new function as a member of the Accessibility Working Group. I am also founder member of the Ottawa Grassroots and Cultural Seniors Coalition. Thank you again, Gypsy, for providing the opportunity to seniors to be present here. Because as you recall, the member of the Parliament for Ottawa Centre, the provincial parliament, said quite often, regularly, almost always, seniors are left behind, are ignored, and the same with people with disability. I'm glad that a couple of you made reference in your speeches today about seniors. However, I asked myself, you as a community leader, where were you yesterday when the cultural seniors had the Gypsy provide us the platform from 5 to 6 o'clock? Where were you? So yesterday, and you have made reference, and I understand, I'm fully aware that all community all demographics have suffered through the pandemic, not only in Ottawa and Canada, but across the globe. Seniors were affected initially, and we continue to be, because our immune system, by nature, by our age, is very weak. But others with immune system more compromised because other chronic diseases or even terminal diseases. Yesterday, you missed the extraordinary presentation for the coordinator of the Ottawa Grassroots and Cultural Seniors Coalition. You don't know that this network includes over 23 cultural seniors organizations here in Ottawa. We provide social, recreational, and educational activities now on Zoom to over 3,000 seniors across the city. And this goes for Councillor King, that I hope that we become most aware of our organization and do some advocacy on our behalf, because we have, the city recognized our long 15 years work in the community, but this, we have promised with the city regardless of funding. Again, it's one of the largest organizations that provides activities for seniors. However, the municipal funding is almost not existent. However, we don't give up. And as we talked yesterday, the leaders of this organization are volunteers. We are all volunteers. We do what is best in our community. It's out of moral duty to serve our community, to help our seniors. With the pandemic, I don't say that we have not suffered. We have suffered a lot, but we became so resilient and show extraordinary solidarity. And it was because of the leadership of the social planning. We never struggled. We had financially, perhaps, we have limited funds, but we were so fast in adjusting, and also for the Social Planning Council to provide a telephone line, because at the time, for example, my group didn't have access to technology. So we have met every second week. We have incredible leaders with incredible creativity to implement and to carry programs with different members of the community, with our multicultural community. So what I'm asking you is to break out of that bubble, because the community, we are all members of the community, and listen to seniors. Don't decide for us. Perhaps we cannot compete physically with you, but intellectually, we are very capable. I know that some seniors have some challenges with certain illnesses that make a little bit mentally slow, but it doesn't mean that we are not capable. So don't be paternalistic. Give us, listen to us. We can work together. And I think listening to you, I think the community in Ottawa is in a need to create an organization and perhaps learn from the cultural senior, Ottawa Grassroots Cultural Seniors Network, how we have survived for 15 years, long 15 years, and the pandemic made us stronger, more united, and it's a strong group of solidarity. And we have to abandon, as I said yesterday when I talk about our indigenous roots of the Americas, we don't have any right to say one country is better than other, or one culture is better than others. All we are equal seniors, all equal members of this society, and embrace each other and look into our difference and make of our difference a stronger community. Abandon that bubble, because again, to talk about seniors, where were you yesterday? So the cultural seniors have been working for over 15 years. And again, I repeat, we have the minimum support from the municipality. We are advancing, so, because I remember when I became the first time member of the Senior Roundtable, thanks to my counselor, Diane Deans, because she knows my involvement in community work, not only on my ethnic group, but in the community, seniors community at large. And I remember that was the only one different, because it was the mainstream organization. Now the network has a permanent seat at the table. So that is very important. So thank you so much for listening to me, but I think that was important for me to let you know how I feel as a senior. And also, I feel to a certain point, a privileged position, because I am able to express myself well in English, somehow in French. I am not shy to express what I feel. I am a straight shooter. Thank you so much.
I think we should give a chance to Claudette. Claudette, you want to say something?
No, not really, but I could just say Chimigwed onje Chimino Taguzoin. What I'm saying is thank you so much for everyone who spoke, your beautiful words. We share knowledge. We share lived experiences, we share realities, we share intelligence, and sharing of one's culture to the other brings power, love, and healing. And we are in this human family. We are related in that human family. And just let us remember that the first mother and the only mother that sustains all of us is our mother, the earth. So Chimigwech, and I do want to say what Anna Marie as what she shared with us yesterday and today. Elders are so wisdom. They are our wisdom keepers. They're beautiful, and we need to listen to our elders every day, and to show them that respect, because they contain and they've lived that knowledge. So thank you, Anna Marie. Thank you, and keep up the good work, because all our elders are so important, because someday, we will be elders too. Thank you. You take good care of yourself. God bless.
Thank you so much to everyone. Rolson, do you have something to say just to conclude the session? Because you're a community leader, you're the counselor, or
Sure.
the head of anti-racism.
Sure, absolutely. Just in terms of the older adult plan, we do have one in place at the municipality. As you might know, we're at the end of that plan. It's coming up to its end at 2022. It's my expectation that we will continue to renew the plan, and that we will continue to consult with communities, especially around areas such as aging with choice, transportation and mobility, well-being, and communication, which were areas of focus. But I've been very clear that we've had challenges with social funding. These are political choices, so it's not just my choice. I want you to know that I've been listening to seniors through different means, including individual meetings to meetings with other groups. But the reality, of course, is that there's only so much funding, of course, in the municipal budget, because it does come from taxpayers, comes from provincial, it comes from property taxes, which is constrained. But we do know that we do need more social service investments. I've been very strong in terms of my advocacy for that, especially seniors who are encountering poverty. So I was very pleased to have been able to work with colleagues around the table and advocate for the city's first poverty reduction strategy in over 10 years, as well as the creation of a food security policy, which we know ultimately would benefit seniors. So I think it's a continuing discussion, but we would acknowledge that there's much more that the city needs to do in terms of social service investments. I've just been very cognizant of that. And I want you to know that many around the table, including myself at council, are really committed to that effort.
Thank you so much. Oh, can we move on to the next performances? Anybody has a question? Or we say goodbye today?
I'll just say goodbye in Arabic. Shukran, shukran Gipsy, shukran everyone for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
You can you can stay with us and enjoy the performances. Just enjoy. Have some chai. We'll have some chai. We'll have a lot of dishes coming up, and the performances, art, cuisine, so many things. We have a long day. Maybe I have a long day.